Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Checking the pulse, Husker Nation, brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't wear colored shirts very often, and big men ain't supposed to wear white. Well, I'm trying to pull it off today, and here's what I'll tell you. I sure didn't eat with this shirt on before the show, and never do the top button. Anyways, I digress. Nebraska, as you find folks at home know, if you're pumped, the Nebraska's 3-0. Headed into a top 25 matchup in Memorial Stadium this Friday night versus Illinois, where the S is silent for Memorial Stadium's 400th. Think about this. 400th consecutive sellout. Don't smash the like button just yet. Nebraska's offense is averaging 421 yards per game. That's the most they've averaged through 3 games to start off a season in a very long time, ladies and gentlemen. And the Black Shirts have only allowed 20 total points so far this year. That's the least amount since 2005. And that defense, I kind of remember that defense just a little bit, allowed 16 points through 3 games. That defense also led the nation with over 50 sacks that year. I can't remember who's the guy that led that team in sacks. Can't remember. Anyways, nobody remembers that guy, but I digress. If you're just having fun with Husker football again, now you can smash that like button. It's just fun to be a fan of Husker football. Again, as always, subscribe if you haven't done so yet to YouTube channel, if you're so inclined. Anyways, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the content, some of the unique new stuff we're doing here on the Carriker Chronicles show this football season going forward. Now, real quick, there's a few things I want to get into. Nebraska did not punt versus Northern Iowa, and the Black Shirts are only allowing 70 rush yards per game and 255 total yards per game so far this season, and Dylan Raiola's offense is averaging 34 points per game. Now, the question is, and we'll dive into what those stats mean and some of the other things mean, who we've played, and what that means a little bit later on in this show. But the point of this show is just how good is Nebraska. And this stems from something that just came out of my mouth during my gut reaction show on Saturday night. If you missed it, go check it out. It just came out. I feel like this Nebraska team is legit. They got a lot to prove, and there's a lot of question marks, and they've done a lot of good things. I just feel like they are. It's not science. I got a million stats here, as always. Just how I feel. And I do reserve the right to change my mind. Okay, this is college football. Things change vastly week to week, not even month to month. I just feel like they're legit. But how good are they really? Let's light this candle and dive into this, shall we? But before we do, a couple of guys got their first starts in their Husker career. Dante Dowdell got his first start at running back for Nebraska. And linebacker Stephon Thompson. My eye on this guy since January, okay? And he's progressively improved since he's gotten here in the spring. Admittedly, needed to get in a little bit better shape, and he's worked hard. Got his first start on Saturday. And the captains for the game. This always means something to me. This past Saturday, all right, were Ramir Johnson, MJ Sherman, John Bullock, who was on this show last week. Go back and check it out if you missed that video. And Brian Buschini, the punter, as well, my fine friends. Now, we are going to move past Nebraska's last game rather quickly and dive into, okay, just how good this Nebraska team is, at least based on what we've seen so far with the information we have at hand. Easy for me to say at this point in time right here, right now. All right, Nebraska outscored Northern Iowa in their last game 14-0 in the second quarter. In 3 games this season, Nebraska has outscored the opposition 51-0 in the second quarter. Last year in 2023, in the second quarter, Nebraska was outscored 81-26. And by the way, the second quarter so far this year is by far Nebraska's best quarter, and it was their best quarter in their last game as well. Nebraska has won 3 straight games by at least 18 points for the first time since 2014. All right, Nebraska held its 3rd straight opponent to open the season to 10 or fewer points. This is the first time Nebraska has held their first 3 opponents to 10 or fewer points since 2005. All right, and the first time they've allowed 30 points or less in the first 3 games of a season since 2009. Pretty good defense that year. Nebraska did not allow a touchdown in the first quarter and has allowed just 1 first quarter touchdown in its last 10 games. Nebraska has not allowed an opening drive touchdown in 10 straight games as well, and has also allowed only 1 opening drive touchdown in its last 16 games. Now, Dylan Raiola connected on better than 70% of his passes for the 3rd straight contest. He is the first Husker quarterback to complete at least 70% of his passes in 3 straight games since Jeff Quinn in 1980. Also, he's the only college football true freshman quarterback to complete over 70% of his passes in 3 straight games since Marcus Mariota did it as a true freshman as well in 2012. Again, John Bullock on this show last week. I had a career-high 9 tackles, bettering his 8 stops last season against Louisiana Tech. Now, the Huskers ran 48 plays on Saturday. 4 of those 48 plays were for touchdowns. Doesn't sound like much, does it? That's 8.3% of their plays resulted in touchdowns. Not half bad. Pretty high percentage, actually. They gained 423 yards on their 48 plays, which is almost 10 yards per play throughout the game. Also, pretty darn good. Now, not everything's fresh pancakes in the morning, a valley full of daisies. Not everything's wonderful. There's things to improve on. Oh, shocker, right? 3 games into the season. Now, Northern Iowa had the ball for 38 minutes. They kept moving the ball. They were able to move it on the ground, able to convert on third downs more than we would have liked. They're a good team, but they're still an FCS team. They were 6 of 16 on third down conversions, and they ran 71 plays, which means they had the ball 60% of the game to Nebraska's 40%. Emmett Johnson. There's people who thinks he looks like the best running back so far this year. On the depth chart, it's Ramir Johnson and Dante Dowdell listed as the code number 1s, and then you've got Emmett and Gabe listed as code number 2s or 3s or 4s, however you want to look at it. It seems like, I love Gabe Irvin, but it seems like he's kind of 4th out of those 4 right now. We'll see how it progresses. Although the first game, he was the goal line back, and he'd be great at that. So would Dowdell. I guess we'll continue to see how this unfolds, because Emmett Johnson still looks like a pretty good back in his own right. I will say this, Nebraska, there's a lot of question marks after the last game and the second half of the second game and things of that nature. But Nebraska's covered the spread in all 3 games so far this year. And I don't know how much value you want to put on that, but it's interesting to some people. They won by 31 points, and we're still not sure how good that performance was. When's the last time Nebraska won by 31 points, or we're sitting here wondering, I don't know if that was good enough. When is the last time? I'm genuinely curious. Now, I talked about the running backs earlier, and last night, again, during my gut reaction, I talked about how Dylan Raiola has exceeded my expectations. I've talked about how impressive Nebraska's skill position players are, especially some of the new, younger ones, some of the transfer portal guys this year. And I'll get to the tight ends more in the future. Don't worry. Got to save some content for down the road as well. Plus, I'm just kind of waiting to see what Fedoni and Borkashire do. And Carter Nelson, I know he's a wide receiver, but he's technically a tight end playing wide receiver. I want to see how that unfolds as the season goes along, but we'll talk about tight ends more in the future. Let's talk more specifically about the offensive line, who's playing good, who's playing improved. I don't think they're playing quite to their potential just yet. And when you think about the veteran experience we have on this O-line, the most experienced unit on Nebraska's team is the offensive line. Husker offensive linemen have combined to play in 224 games in their career with 153 starts. That was entering the season. Okay, now they're up over 163 games in, which is good for 5th in the country. I've talked about this before. I should point out that Florida State is number 2 in the country as far as offensive line starts, 220 combined starts throughout their career, and well, they're pretty awful. Wow. Bye-bye to Florida State's college football playoff hopes and being any good at all. But part of that, Colorado is built entirely through the transfer portal. Florida State's not entirely through the transfer portal, but of any other team in the country, they're probably number 2. There's something to be said for how many games have they played together? What's their cohesiveness? What's that all like? That's their problem. I just thought it was interesting. But Nebraska has had Bryce Benhart, Ben Scott, Turner Corcoran, Henry Letowski. All these guys have started together. Micah Mazuka is new, but they got a lot of experience and cohesiveness. Bryce Benhart owns the record for most games started by a Nebraska offensive lineman. 44 in his career. And of his 46 games that he's played at have been at right tackle. Turner Corcoran has started 34 games with 28 starts at left tackle. Ben Scott's in his 2nd season here at Nebraska, 3rd season starting because he had a year at Arizona State before he came in. Justin Evans Jenkins is the least experienced with 8 starts. So still 2/3 of a season, under his belt. And then we've got Henry Letowski, Joey Mancino, and again, speedy recovery to Teddy Prohaska as well. So we got an experienced offensive line. They're clearly playing better. They're pass protecting better. The run game isn't as consistent as I would like, at least to this point so far. I just think they can be really, really good. I expect them to be good. And I just need them to continue to get better, just as they did from last year to this year, at least to this point. Before we dive into more things, and we talk about just how good is this Nebraska team, based on what we know so far and what I anticipate down the road as well. We're going to look ahead a little bit too. I'm having more and more companies I'm just going to be honest. I'm having companies reach out to be sponsors for this show. Quite a few, as a matter of fact. So first of all, I appreciate that. But I had somebody ask, do I have to know you personally in order to be a sponsor on your show? It seems like all your sponsors, like you have personal ties to them. No, there's a reason for that though. Because I truly like to promote businesses that I believe in. I believe in the owner, I believe in the company, I believe in the product, and that's why I don't have to know you personally, but I have to believe in what you're doing, your business, your product. So if you're interested in being a sponsor on this show, you can go to CarrikerChronicles.com, go to home, and contact us. Very simple. CarrikerChronicles.com, you're going to see a whole bunch of phenomenal content, #cheap plug. Okay, you can go to home, and contact us, send us a message, and I'd love to engage in a conversation with you if you're interested. I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors right here, right now, because they are phenomenal companies ran by phenomenal owners. All right, DPS Concrete Construction. They've been with us for a long time because they do a great job and they seem to like the show, so I appreciate that. You can check them out at dpsconstruction.net. They do phenomenal work when it comes to concretes, retaining walls. If you need that work done, dpsconstruction.net, especially if you're in the Omaha metro area. If this is your line of work, Jason Armstrong's the guy to work for. All right, big heart, smart dude, highly successful. Check out dpsconstruction.net. Also, the Carriker family pool's officially in. Bonsall Pool, they're the ones who did it. Now, here's the other thing. I haven't talked about this a ton as much. They also did our hot tub, and they take care and maintain our hot tubs and our pools and our hot tub and things of that nature. And they do a phenomenal job. If you're interested in a hot tub, go to bonzalpool.com. If you have these things and you need them taken care of, they're the fine folks to do it for you. Jeff Bonzel and his crew do a great job. bonzalpool.com. Now, there's clearly lots of positives to Nebraska's football season so far. And fans are excited for good reason. I'm excited for good reason. All right, this is a good Nebraska team, ladies and gentlemen. I believe is probably the best team at least since 2016. The last time the Huskers started 7-0, and the last time Nebraska won 9 games. Now, I'm not going to sit here and guarantee we're going to win 9 games. It's a different conference. We're playing different teams. I do believe we can. I'm still feeling great about my 8-4 preseason prediction. As far as the quality of team, I believe this is the best team, with all due respect to every team between now and 2016 to the first year of Nebraska football, which includes me, which includes other people. I got none but love and respect for every Nebraska football team that's ever played. Some have more success than others, okay? It's that simple. I believe, based on what I see so far, that this Nebraska football team is at least as good as any team we've had since 2016. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see if I'm wrong. We'll see if they're better. We'll see if they're relatively the same two, but that's the last time Nebraska started 7-0, won 9 games. Now, I will say this. That 2016 team did lose 4 of their last 6 games, including a 14-point loss to Tennessee in the bowl game. So how does Nebraska, feels like we're going to have a really good hot start. At least so far, 3-0, maybe 4-0, maybe 7-0, maybe not. I don't know. But how do they avoid a drop-off, whether it be in the middle of the season, the end of the season, starting Friday versus Illinois, who's ranked coming into our house? Okay, already beat a ranked team this year. How do they avoid a drop-off or a lull or, more disappointments? I don't want to say more, but any disappointments at all. You're going to have some in football. You know what I mean. Now, when evaluating this team, one thing that is challenging, when you play teams like UTEP, Northern Iowa, who I actually think Northern Iowa may be better than UTEP, even though Northern Iowa is an FCS team, and Colorado, they've got 3 of the most talented players in all of America, and probably 2 top 10 picks and a top 5 pick, and I still don't think Shedeur Sanders is a top quarterback, but I've already talked about that. He's probably going to be taken in the first round of the NFL draft. This team still doesn't want to run the ball, and they still don't want to play defense. How good Colorado is or how good they're not, they may not be one of the better teams in the Big 12. So it's hard to gauge based on competition so far. We sure look good. And we sure look good at points. And what I see, what I feel, what I've experienced is very positive so far. But even some of the stats I listed earlier have shown that we've improved vastly, especially from last year to this year, especially on offense. Okay, but even some of those stats, you got to take them for what they are. Nebraska's defense last year was the 11th ranked defense nationally and 8th ranked run defense a year ago. All right, this year's black shirts so far are giving up an average of 255 total yards per game, which is 23rd in the country. They still haven't allowed a rushing touchdown, which is best in America, and they're giving up 70 rush yards per game, which is 16th in the country. Okay, so keep those numbers in mind. Marcus Satterfield's offense so far averaging 421 yards of offense per game, which is 50th in the country, and 34 points per game, which is tied for 44th in the country with 4 other teams. Those teams are Bowling Green, North Carolina, Penn State, and Stanford. Now, our scoring defense, is 8th in the country, and the numbers have vastly improved on offense, especially in the turnover margin. Wait for it, ladies and gentlemen. We're actually +3 in the turnover margin, knock on wood. So, it's still a young season, and there's still a lot of room for improvement. We'll learn more as we play better teams. Some of these stats are vastly improved. When you compare them nationally, some of them are impressive. Some of them we'd like to keep climbing the national rankings. Okay, through the first 2 games, when you just start to think about putting together a full game, this Husker team. Through the first 2 games, and I didn't talk about this on this show, so I'm talking about it now, and then I'll get to the 3 games. First 8 quarters, I felt like Nebraska had 5 good quarters, like really good quarters. 5, not 6, 7, or 8, 5, okay? The first quarter versus UTEP wasn't great. Second through fourth quarter, pretty good. The first half versus Colorado was really good. The second half, we got outscored 10-0. So again, 5 out of the first 8 quarters, I thought Nebraska played pretty good. Even versus Northern Iowa, Nebraska only outscored the Panthers by more than a single touchdown in 1 quarter, and that was the second quarter. I talked about it earlier. And again, I got nothing but respect for Northern Iowa, but they're still an FCS team. So out of 12 quarters, the Huskers, in my opinion, when you talk about playing really good football here, I would say they played really good football in about 7 of 12 quarters. So imagine if they put together 4 full quarters. Okay, or 3 out of 4 quarters more consistently, but 4 full quarters. Nebraska starts the game great. Okay, they've scored touchdowns on all 3 of their first drives in each game so far this season. I've already talked about success in the second quarter. They got to be more consistent as the game goes along, in my opinion. And again, as I mentioned, Nebraska's offensive line is playing better. Hopefully they'll continue to get better. They've got a lot of experience, and I have some decent expectations based on their experience and the talent that they have. A lot of these guys were recruited pretty highly coming out of high school. Last year, we were the number 2 rush offense in the Big Ten. Currently, as we sit right here, right now, we're number 9 in the Big Ten. So for this year, in fairness, okay, we had to run the ball last year. We couldn't really throw the ball very well, so we had to run the ball. So that's going to inflate run numbers. This year, we can throw the ball better. We're getting more big chunk plays out of the passing game as well, so that's going to decrease the running game numbers just a little bit, in all fairness, looking at everything as equally as we can. And the pass protection for Dylan Raiola has been much better than it was so far this year than it was for our quarterbacks last year. That's noticeable, okay, at least to this point. Defensively, we can be great. We should be great. We've done some really good things so far this year, and there's some really good individual efforts so far this year, but we've got to tackle better, and we've got to get off the field on third downs. The field goal kicking game is still kind of a mystery to me. We'll see how that unfolds. We will learn more versus Illinois this Friday night. That's going to be another electric atmosphere. The next game is our first road game at Purdue. They don't look very good, but it's our first road game of the year at Purdue. Rutgers talked about it. They're not going to be a pushover, and they haven't lost a game yet this year when they come to Lincoln. Indiana seems to be vastly improved, and I remember thinking that before the season. They're going to be better than people realize. They're 3-0, and they just mollywopped UCLA out in the Rose Bowl. First time Indiana's even played a game in the Rose Bowl in a half a century. They beat them 42-13. That's going to be a road game for the Huskers, but it is after a bye week, so I like that. All right, Nebraska will be favored. As long as we keep winning, they should be favored in each and every one of these games going forward. Now, just how good is this Nebraska team? As I said earlier, I think at least as good as the 2016 Nebraska team. They look potentially even better to me. We probably face a couple of more tougher teams during the regular season. So how does that equate record-wise? We'll see. How do they improve over the course of the year? We'll see, okay? As I said, that team started out 7-0 and then had a tough stretch at the end. Can Nebraska avoid that at some point, especially when we get to the last 5 games of the year? And again, nothing but love and respect to everybody who's ever donned the N on their helmet, all right? This is just how I feel, okay? And if the Huskers continue to get better every game, which I think they have so far, at least in certain areas, if they continue to get better every game, I'm not talking Big Ten or national title or anything like that. You never know. But I'm not going to predict that right here, right now. And again, I'm allowed to change my mind as this season unfolds, but as I sit here right now, I feel like this Nebraska team has a chance to be legit. Got to play 4 full quarters, got to tackle a little bit better and get off the field on defense. Hopefully the field goal kicking game starts to pick up and we can trust it. Again, it's not entirely based on science despite my 40 million stats and 89 papers of notes that are now on the ground. I just feel like we have a chance to be legit. Now, just to reiterate, I am not predicting a Big Ten title or a national championship or an undefeated season or anything like that. I mean, you never know, okay? But I'm not going to sit here and predict that. What I am saying is I just have a feeling like we have a chance, if we keep getting better and improving in all these areas, to be a legit team that people don't want to play, that people see on the schedule and they kind of circle that game on their calendar. All right, and there's a little extra oomph when they play Nebraska. I feel like we can be that type of a legit team. What that means beyond that, I don't know, and that's half the fun. Seeing how this team progresses, how these games unfold. Okay, how we do each and every week, how much we improve, where do we not improve? Hopefully we don't digress, hopefully we get better. Again, despite my 89,000 notes, and most of the paper except for the last one are all on the floor now, it's not really based on science other than what I see, my research I've done, but how I feel at this moment in time. And I do, again, reserve the right to change my mind because these are college kids and a lot can change from week to week. But it's fun to watch Husker football right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason I used the term legit optimism before the season started. I almost always use the word excitement. Anybody can get excited about anything, but I use the 2 words legit optimism coming into this season for a reason. What do I got left on my notes here, ladies and gentlemen? I get fan questions all the time, and I'm going to start to try to answer more of those. And again, if you want to send a fan question in, it's CarrikerChronicles.com. Go to the home section, okay, contact us. CarrikerChronicles.com, home, contact us. You can send us a message. You can send us your thoughts, a question, anything like that. So here's one that I got from Todd Grouse. He said, why do you display a CSU Rams helmet over your right shoulder? So a couple of things. Thank you for the question. Try to not knock over everything. I have a tendency to break stuff. Thank you for visiting the website and supporting the show. This, my friend, is not a CSU Rams helmet. I only support teams that have beaten Colorado this year. This is actually a St. Louis Rams helmet, the team that drafted me. It's not even LA Rams, okay, because they're not in St. Louis anymore. But this is the team I played for, which was the St. Louis Rams. So that's why I have that helmet behind me. And for those who pay attention, there are a few things behind me for not so obvious reasons. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here are my questions for you fine folks at home. Number one, will Nebraska be a top 20 ranked team after the Illinois game? Means they got to win and climb in the rankings. Let me know, will they be a top 20 team after the Illinois game this Friday? Number two, do you feel like Nebraska is legit, a team that people circle when they're getting ready to play them? Like this is a good team. Do you feel like Nebraska is that team or can become that team if they're not yet? And then I saw something that I thought was interesting, and it was meant to be funny. It's true. Somebody pointed out that we are undefeated since Trev Alberts has left. So, while I did chuckle, I have a legit question for you fine folks at home. And you got to keep in mind, Trev Alberts is a guy that in a full suit and tie, dress shoes, raced my 7-year-old, she was 5 at the time, 2 years ago inside the Hawks Center and let her win for 20 yards. With that in mind, here's my question. Are you glad Trev Alberts was our AD? Not how he left, not how it ended. Nope. Are you glad he was our AD? And I'll tell you why I'm asking. He's the guy that hired Matt Rule. Does Nebraska football look like this without Matt Rule? Our previous head coach completely bungled the recruiting of Dylan Raiola. Matt Rule was able to fix that. Dylan Raiola's not here. If Matt Rule's not here, who's probably not here if Trev Alberts wasn't the AD? Let me know. Are you glad he was our AD? Not how it ended. Not how you feel about him going forward. All right, until next time, Husker Nation, go Big Red Nose. Remember to throw the bug.